History shows that peace and progress come to those who make the right choices. Nations in every part of the world have traveled this difficult path. Europe, the bloodiest battlefield of the 20th century, is united, free and at peace. From Brazil to South Africa, from Turkey to South Korea, from India to Indonesia. People of different races, religions, and traditions have lifted millions out of poverty. While respecting the rights of their citizens and meeting their responsibilities as nations. And it is because of the progress that I've witnessed in my own lifetime. The progress that I've witnessed after nearly 4 years as president, that I remain ever hopeful about the world that we live in. The war in Iraq is over. American troops have come home. We've begun a transition in Afghanistan. And America and our allies will end our war on schedule in 2014. Al-Qaeda has been weakened, and Osama bin Laden is no more. Nations have come together to lock down nuclear materials, and America and Russia are reducing our arsenals. We have seen hard choices made from Naypyidaw to Cairo. To Abidjan to put more power in the hands of citizens. At a time of economic challenge, the world has come together to broaden prosperity. Through the G20, we have partnered with emerging countries to keep the world on the path of recovery. America has pursued a development agenda that fuels growth and breaks dependency. And worked with African leaders to help them feed their nations. New partnerships have been forged to combat corruption and promote government that is open and transparent. and new commitments have been made through the Equal Futures Partnership. To ensure that women and girls can fully participate in politics and pursue opportunity. And later today, I will discuss our efforts to combat the scourge of human trafficking. All these things give me hope. But what gives me the most hope is not the actions of us. Not the actions of leaders, it is the people that I've seen. The American troops who have risked their lives and sacrificed their limbs for strangers half a world away. The students in Jakarta or Seoul who are eager to use their knowledge to benefit mankind. The faces in a square in Prague or a parliament in Ghana who see democracy giving voice to their aspirations. The young people in the favelas of Rio and the schools of Mumbai whose eyes shine with promise. These men, women, and children of every race and every faith remind me that for every angry mob that gets shown on television, there are billions around the world who share. Similar hopes and dreams. They tell us that there is a common heartbeat to humanity. So much attention in our world turns to what divides us. That's what we see on the news. That's what consumes our political debates. But when you strip it all away, people everywhere long for the freedom to determine their destiny. The dignity that comes with work, the comfort that comes with faith. And the justice that exists when governments serve their people and not the other way around. The United States of America will always stand up for these aspirations. For our own people and for people all across the world. That was our founding purpose. That is what our history shows. That is what Chris Stevens worked for throughout his life. And I promise you this, long after the killers are brought to justice. Chris Stevens's legacy will live on in the lives that he touched, in the tens of thousands who marched against. Violence through the streets of Benghazi, in the Libyans who changed their Facebook photo to one of Chris. In the signs that read, simply, Chris Stevens was a friend to all Libyans. They should give us hope. They should remind us that so long as we work for it, justice will be done. That history is on our side, and that a rising tide of liberty will never be reversed. Thank you very much. Barack Obama. 70th Session of the United Nations General Assembly Address. Delivered September 28, 2015, UN Headquarters, New York, New York. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, 70 years after the founding of the United Nations. It is worth reflecting on what, together, the members of this body have helped to achieve. Out of the ashes of the Second World War, having witnessed the unthinkable power of the atomic age, the United States has worked with many nations in this assembly to prevent a Third World War by forging alliances with old adversaries. By supporting the steady emergence of strong democracies accountable to their people instead of any foreign power. And by building an international system that imposes a cost on those who choose conflict over cooperation. an order that recognizes the dignity and equal worth of all people. That is the work of 7 decades. That is the ideal that this body, at its best, has pursued. Of course, there have been too many times when, collectively, we have fallen short of these ideals. Over 7 decades, terrible conflicts have claimed untold victims. But we have pressed forward, slowly. Steadily, to make a system of international rules and norms that are better and stronger and more consistent. It is this international order that has underwritten unparalleled advances in human liberty and prosperity. It is this collective endeavor that's brought about diplomatic cooperation between the world's major powers. And buttressed a global economy that has lifted more than 1 billion people from poverty. It is these international principles that help constrain bigger countries from imposing our will on smaller ones. And advance the emergence of democracy and development and individual liberty on every continent. This progress is real. It can be documented in lives saved, and agreements forged, and diseases conquered, and in mouths fed. And yet, we come together today knowing that the march of human progress never travels in a straight line. That our work is far from complete, that dangerous currents risk pulling us back into a darker, more disordered world. Today, we see the collapse of strong men and fragile states breeding conflict. And driving innocent men, women, and children across borders on an epic scale. Brutal networks of terror have stepped into the vacuum. Technologies that empower individuals are now also exploited by those who spread disinformation. Or suppress dissent, or radicalize our youth. Global capital flows have powered growth and investment, but also increased risk of contagion. Weakened the bargaining power of workers, and accelerated inequality. How should we respond to these trends? There are those who argue that the ideals enshrined in the UN Charter are unachievable or out of date, a legacy of a post-war era not suited to our own. Effectively, they argue for a return to the rules that applied for most of human history and that predate this institution. The belief that power is a zero-sum game, that might makes right. That strong states must impose their will on weaker ones. That the rights of individuals don't matter, and that in a time of rapid change, order must be imposed by force. On this basis, we see some major powers assert themselves in ways that contravene international law. We see an erosion of the democratic principles and human rights that are fundamental to this institution's mission. Information is strictly controlled, the space for civil society restricted. We're told that such retrenchment is required to beat back disorder. That it's the only way to stamp out terrorism, or prevent foreign meddling. In accordance with this logic, we should support tyrants like Bashar al-Assad. Who drops barrel bombs to massacre innocent children, because the alternative is surely worse. The increasing skepticism of our international order can also be found in the most advanced democracies. We see greater polarization, more frequent gridlock, movements on the far right. And sometimes the left, that insist on stopping the trade that binds our fates to other nations. Calling for the building of walls to keep out immigrants. Most ominously, we see the fears of ordinary people being exploited through appeals to sectarianism. Or tribalism, or racism, or anti-Semitism, appeals to a glorious past before the body politic. Was infected by those who look different, or worship God differently, a politics of us versus them. The United States is not immune from this. Even as our economy is growing and our troops have largely returned from Iraq and Afghanistan. We see in our debates about America's role in the world a notion of strength. That is defined by opposition to old enemies, perceived adversaries, a rising China. Or a resurgent Russia, a revolutionary Iran, or an Islam that is incompatible with peace. We see an argument made that the only strength that matters for the United States is bellicose words and shows of military force, that cooperation and diplomacy will not work. As President of the United States, I am mindful of the dangers that we face, they cross my desk every morning. I lead the strongest military that the world has ever known. And I will never hesitate to protect my country or our allies, unilaterally and by force where necessary. But I stand before you today believing in my core that we the nations of the world, cannot return to the old ways of conflict and coercion. We cannot look backwards. We live in an integrated world. One in which we all have a stake in each other's success. We cannot turn those forces of integration. No nation in this assembly can insulate itself from the threat of terrorism. Or the risk of financial contagion, the flow of migrants, or the danger of a warming planet. The disorder we see is not driven solely by competition between nations or any single ideology. And if we cannot work together more effectively, we will all suffer the consequences. That is true for the United States, as well.